Alright, hello, welcome back. I'm Savalian, a software dev slash creative, and today I want to talk to you about my productivity systems. So, I tend to change how I do things every couple months, partially because I get a little bored, and partially because I need to make sure it still works. I think we like to imagine like a perfect routine that will work forever, but the unfortunate truth is that things change. And it's not realistic to imagine that you're going to feel the same way about what you're doing for years at a time. So every couple months, I reassess, I see what I want to do next and how I want to structure it, how I want to track it. So, at the beginning of quarter three, I decided to try out ClickUp for my productivity system. I was using Notion for pretty much the whole year before that. And then I switched to ClickUp because I have talked about ClickUp before. I like ClickUp. I think it's a good system, but I had never used it for my main system. I had only kind of played with it and talked about it and reviewed it. So I switched to ClickUp for Q3, and this is how it went. And before I get into this, I do want to mention a little spoiler for the end of this video. I am going to stop using ClickUp and move back to Notion. Now, I don't want this to be like a negative review or a recommendation that you should not use ClickUp. Like I said, I still think it's a great system, but it didn't quite mesh with what I like to do with my planning. So I'm going to talk about what didn't work for me so that maybe you can decide if you would still like to use ClickUp, if you would not, or, it's a personal thing. And so I don't think you should take this as a yes or no, should you or should you not use ClickUp. It's just more information for you to use when you're making a decision that's going to work for you. So when I switched to ClickUp, I wanted to maintain the 12-week structure. So this whole year, from January 1st, I've been using a system based on the 12-week year, where you set pretty lofty goals for the next 12 weeks. You break down those goals into weekly goals, basically, and then each week you execute on them as best you can, and then you sort of assess your progress and see how you can improve the next week. It's just a structure that I like to use. I think it works really well for me. So I've used ClickUp's sprint feature. So there's a way to enable different features in ClickUp by going to the space you're in. And I believe it's just under settings. You can go to space settings, you can turn features on and off. The sprint feature lets you basically create special lists for each sprint. So I made week-long sprints. I didn't get this going until week 2, so I've labeled it week 2, but the sprint names were already generated, so the numbers are all off. A little bit annoying, it's not the end of the world, but basically the sprint feature lets you automatically move tasks to the next sprint if you don't finish them. It can sort of batch create all these lists all at once, so if you know you're going to do a 12-week year, you can generate 12-week-long sprints right off the bat. And each sprint has a status, so all of these are done. I am a little, actually I'm not behind. I have updated this for the current sprint, but this one's a little light on tasks because I stopped using it around, or week 9, sorry, week 9 sprint 8 is when I sort of stopped feeling the magic and I started moving back into Notion a little bit. One of the obstacles I had when switching to ClickUp in the first place was I like to keep this hierarchy of quarterly goals and then individual weekly tasks. So to create that, I have this list. It's the Q3 goal list, where I used tags for my different, I haven't really come up with a name of them, categories, my software goals, my mortal vessel goals, my simple wealth goals, and my media goals. I've talked about these in a previous video. One of my yearly setup videos, I talked about how I've split my life into these 4 categories. But because I'm not on a paid plan, I can't use, I have exceeded my limit for custom properties. So I can't use any more custom properties. So I've switched to using tags, which are included in the free version. So I have tags for the category, and then I have another tag for whether this is a quarterly goal or a weekly goal. So I've named this epic kind of in the Scrum line of thinking. So these are all my epics, and I've given each of these deadlines. But these tasks are not put into sprints. They are at the quarterly level, and then beneath those, I have tasks that are weekly. So these go into the individual sprints. And actually, I will turn on this option to show the closed tasks so we can see everything that I've put in here. Some of them I did forget to tag, that's fine. And ClickUp is also just a little bit laggy. They have a big update coming out. They released this flashy trailer, which I thought was a little bit funny just because it was almost like an ad for a fast new car or something. It was very sleek. But they're apparently working on a lot of performance improvements, so you may not see the delay in loading larger lists like this in the future, but I am, obviously. But basically, I have these weekly tasks that are for the weekly work, and then each of them is linked to the quarterly goal. So I was a little bit disappointed. It doesn't seem like ClickUp has that parent-child hierarchy that I really like to use for goals like this. Well, actually, they do. They have this concept of subtasks, but the subtasks aren't full tickets as far as I can tell. So, like, I could go in here and I can create a subtask, but what I can't do is put this subtask in a different sprint than the parent task. They're sort of locked together in the same lists. So what I really wanted was to have a task at the quarterly level and then subtasks for each sprint. But as far as I could tell, you can't do that. So maybe things have changed. Maybe I'm not doing it right. But that's the obstacle that I ran into. But the way that I got around it was this combination of the tags and also the linked tasks where I've just linked these to their like parent task basically. Another little thing I ran into is that I like to have these configured a certain way. So I like to have them grouped by tags so I can see like, oh, here's my software work, here's my health work. I like to have those grouped separately. I like to have the status visible. And when I created all these sprints, it didn't seem to follow a template. They all look like this from the start, where they're grouped by status, and they just have a couple of properties. And so maybe there is a way to create a template for all your sprints, and it uses that template, and everything looks the way you want. But the way I did it, basically every week, I would have to come in here, I'd have to go into this column menu, I'd have to turn on all of the things that I wanted and configure it manually every week. So another thing that it may be a thing that I could do automatically if I knew how. It could be something that is more tied to like a paid plan, or it could just be something ClickUp doesn't do. But that was another little problem that I had with ClickUp, was that I felt like I had to do a lot of configuring week to week, where in Notion, I kind of set everything up from the beginning and then I could just go. I also had a little bit of trouble seeing how I did each week, the scoring part of the 12-week year. So if we look at this, I can see, like, these are what I got complete, but it doesn't keep the ones that I didn't complete in the sprint. It moves them forward to the next sprint so they can be completed later, which for a lot of teams and for other projects, I think this would be the way you'd want to do it, because you would want that work to get done. But it does make it hard to like score yourself, grade yourself, see how well you're doing if you can't see what the initial commitment was compared to what you got done. So now I think if I was using a paid version, I believe I would have reports that would cover this for me. I'm not totally sure all that they have available. We can go look. I have just a private dashboard here that I created. So by default, you have some of these like pie charts, status charts, things like that. And then there should also be some sprint. Yeah, so there are several sprint charts. I could have used these if I had a business account, but I don't. So if you're someone who wants to really commit to ClickUp, you really want to use ClickUp for your work, it could work just fine for you. But I didn't have visibility into like my velocity, my other Scrum buzzwords, my cumulative burn up chart or whatever. But because I didn't have that, it makes the scoring part of the 12-week year very, very challenging. And in Notion, of course, I can have access to those numbers. I just have to set them up myself. So that's kind of an overview of how I used ClickUp, what I didn't quite like about it, and what I think is possible with ClickUp. So just a little recap. I didn't like not having access to a parent-child relationship that I could put over the quarterly sprint structures. I also ran into a problem with not having that paid account. Some of the features that I would really like to have were not available, but they were available for free in Notion if you just put in that little effort to configure it manually from the start. So it's kind of a trade-off there. If you would like to do more work sort of administrating your task database, Notion might be better for you. Or if you just want things to work and connect together on their own, maybe a paid version of ClickUp would be better for you. So next, let's look at Notion. Let's look at the Notion system I used just before this, and I'll talk about how I want to change it as I'm going back into Notion for my tasks. So this is my dashboard that I built. I made it pretty. I have these cyberpunk neon rain themed images that I just added here because I thought they looked nice. I have a couple links to other parts of my Notion that I wanted to have access to on a daily basis. At the top here, we have my dashboard information. So this would have a card for the current quarter and then another card for the current week. And I've actually gone in and played with some new Notion features that I did not have access to when I was using it regularly. So one of those things was this, a progress bar. I think this progress bar looks really good. They added these, I want to say it was a month or two ago. They have a linear progress bar like this. They have a radial one that goes in a circle. They have some other sort of just stylized visuals for percentages that aren't a bar, but they're just a little bit nicer to look at. And then they've also added something that I don't believe I'm using in this view, but it's a status property. So you can have a bunch of statuses for something that is not in progress. You can have a bunch for in progress, and then you have a bunch for done, and you can do some cool filtering on that that I was kind of doing manually before, and now if I remake this with the new features, I can have it just be a little bit more streamlined. So the dashboard I've set up, and also the sort of weekly tasks that I've put here, I've built them around what information I wanted to learn about these tasks. So because I have a lot of projects going on pretty much all the time, and some of them are intended to be jobs, they're intended to earn money, and some of them are just for fun, I wanted to be able to track the time I was putting into all of these things. And for the projects that were intended to make money, I wanted to know, how much I was making versus how much effort I was putting in. So obviously not every task is a money-making task. I have some knitting tasks in here, I have some cleaning tasks. Streaming is not insanely profitable. I don't do it to make money. I do it for a lot of reasons. But when I'm comparing, what I'm going to spend my precious life energy on, it's good to know how they rank against each other in terms of how much I enjoy them, how much money they make, where these things can meet in the middle. And so it was important to me that I was able to measure that, how much am I earning off of these side projects that I started to make money. And I find it very difficult to talk about this because I feel like it sounds a little bit money grubby, but I love the numbers, I love tracking them, I just really like playing with metrics, so take this however you will, I guess. Just know that that's kind of something that I want my Notion dashboard to have. And that wasn't really available in ClickUp. I think there is a way to attach like a billing rate and a time estimate to ClickUp, but I've found it a little bit clunky to use and not as visible as what I could make in Notion. So, but I have things like the hours worked, the tasks completed, the money I earned on those projects during that month. And then I have some progress bars here. This is actually the time that has passed through the quarter. So quarter two is over, it's 100% complete. And then this is how many tasks I finished. So at the top here, I have cards for the current quarter and then one for the current week. And then below it, I have my favorite part of this system, which was assigning different tasks to different days. But I really like this view because I added some tags here for which category it was part of, how much time I spent on it, whether it was intended to make money or just for fun or for fitness. I added a lot of fun little properties on here just to make the cards display a little bit more pleasant to look at and a little bit more informative without being too wordy. Now, the problems that I had with Notion that kind of prompted me to move to ClickUp, one was caused by this next piece, which is that I had this log, I had this extra layer where I would create a work session for each weekly task for when I worked on it. That I would attach the time I spent onto that work task, and I would put a little note about what I did. And this created multiple pages for each task, and then each quarterly goal had potentially multiple tasks. So I had a lot of pages being created, and I think this really bogged down Notion because searching was super laggy. It was really hard to search for different tasks. I think going forward, I'm going to take out that level. I'm going to move all of the information directly into the weekly task. And also I need to trim out a lot of these. I had a lot of properties that I put in because I thought I might use them and then I ended up not using them. So just in general, I'm gonna cut out the excess in these tasks, and I'm gonna make it a lot more streamlined. I think I was going for maximum convenience for plugging things in, and it just created a system that was a little bit too complex for what I needed. So trimming out stuff you don't need is a good way to simplify your processes, and I think I really needed to do that here to make it a little bit more usable. So going forward, I am going to switch back to Notion. Like I said, I still really like ClickUp, but I feel like the flexibility of Notion is just more me. It just fits my process a little bit more. So I'm going to do some of those things that I mentioned. I'm going to simplify the hierarchy a little bit, compress things, make them easier to plug in, easier to plan, and a little bit more useful. And then I'm also going to do something to make searching a little bit easier when I have a lot of tasks filling up, as I continue to use these systems. What I'm going to do is make a template for one quarter, and then at the end of each quarter, I'm going to archive that, create a new one, a fresh one, so that when I search within that database, I'm only searching within that 12-week span and not searching all the tasks I've ever done in Notion. Because I think that was another problem, which was finding dependencies, finding things I've done was really difficult because when I have, 10 tasks for medium writing, it's hard to differentiate between them because they all have similar names. So I'm going to just start fresh each quarter, I think, and create that template so making the new quarter is easy. I won't have to go in and connect everything up manually. And then that also might make it available for me to share with you guys. Like I mentioned before, I really want to do a Notion setup tutorial, maybe offer a template, but I'm hesitant to give out something that I don't feel like is good enough or complete and clean and practical. So what I've been doing is just sort of working with these systems, improving them, building them a little bit better each time, and then at some point, hopefully, I will feel like they are good enough, this video ended up being a bit rambly, but I hope it was a good look into my little ClickUp experiments, what I like about the two platforms and what I don't like, and how I'm going to make these changes to make a system that works just a little bit better for me next quarter. So I'm going to work on my new Notion changes. I'm going to get everything all set up. I'm going to play more with these new progress bars, with the new status property, and hopefully I'll be able to talk about my new system in an upcoming video. I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you so much for watching. So don't forget to subscribe if you'd like to see more like this, more about productivity, about processes, game development, game reviews. I've been sort of branching out and it's been really fun. But I will be back with another video and I hope to see you there. Thank you. Bye bye bye. Have a good day. See you soon.